Summary. Albert Edward Foreman, verger at St. Peter's Church, Neville Square, took pride in his job and wore his gown with satisfaction. He took immense care of his gown and ironed it himself. In his 16 years as verger, he had a collection of several old gowns piled away nearly wrapped in the bottom drawer of his wardrobe since he didn't have the heart to throw it away. There was a christening that afternoon and it had just got over. He got busy clearing things and waited for the vicar to leave the vestry so that he could tidy it up and leave. He saw the vicar walk across the chancel, bow in front of the altar, and come down the aisle towards him. The new vicar. The vicar was in his 40s, red-faced and energetic, new to the church, and had been recently appointed. He got himself involved in all the activities of the church. Albert Edward missed the previous vicar who wanted things in church to be done neatly. He didn't create a fuss nor did he interfere in all things. Albert Edward was patient and hoped that the new vicar would change with time. Interaction with the vicar. The vicar asks Foreman to go with him to the vestry since he had something to say to him. While they walk to the vestry, Foreman compliments the vicar on his smooth handling of the crying infant. The vicar takes pride in that he can quieten crying babies, and he also knew that he was admired by the mothers for the deft handling of the whimpering infants. They enter the vestry and Albert Edward is surprised to see the two churchwardens sitting there. Intimation to Albert Edward. The two churchwardens were elderly men and had been churchwardens for several years. The vicar sits between the two churchwardens at the refectory table. Albert Edward wonders what the matter could be and feels slightly uneasy. He observes that the vicar looks obstinate but the other two look slightly troubled. He feels that the vicar has forced them to do something that they are not so keen on. Albert Edward stands respectfully in front of them without revealing any thoughts on his face. Before working at St. Peter's Church, he was in service in very good houses. He had started as page boy and was employed as a butler before taking up the post of verger at St. Peter's. He was tall, thin, grave, dignified with clean-cut and distinguished features. He resembled, if not a duke, then at least like an actor specializing in duke's parts. He was also tactful, firm, self-assured with an unimpeachable character. The vicar says that Albert Edward has conducted his duties in a satisfactory way, but he was astonished to know that the verger was illiterate and could neither read nor write. Albert Edward replied that the former vicar knew about it and said that it didn't make a difference. The two churchwardens too express outrage that he had been verger of the church for 16 years without learning to read and write. The vicar issues an ultimatum to Albert Edward that he learn to read and write within 3 months or else he loses his job. He responds that at his age he would not be able to acquire literacy. He would resign once they found a replacement for him. He had never liked the new vicar and thought him a misfit with the classy congregation at St. Peter's. He knew his worth and didn't want to be taken advantage of by having his good nature exploited. Reflections of Albert Edward. Politely, Albert Edward closed the door and stepped out. Though he maintained his dignity in presence of the vicar and churchwardens, after coming out, he was shaken and upset. Being immersed in sad thoughts, while walking home, he took a wrong turn. He did not know what he should do regarding a job. He did not want to go back to domestic work. Though he had some savings, that would run out soon. He had never thought about the situation. On the contrary, he had imagined that he would continue as verger till his death. He was tired and wanted a cigarette to comfort him. He looked for a shop to buy a packet of cigarettes. cigarettes. He could not sight one and walked further. It was a long street with all kinds of shops, but not a single one sold cigarettes. He found it strange and checked again. There wasn't a single shop selling tobacco. He reflected that a person with a small shop selling tobacco would be able to do well. He wonders about how things come to a person suddenly when the expectations are least. A decision. Reaching home, he constantly the matter from all aspects. The next day he went to the same street and found a little shop to let. He took it and after a month on leaving St. Peter's set up in business as a tobacconist and newsagent. In a year's time, his business was doing well, which made him think about taking another shop and entrusting the runner of it to a manager. He searched for another street without a tobacconist in it, found a shop, and started his business there too. He thought of further expansion and in 10 years he had 10 shops which earned him a lot of money that he deposited in the bank. Life comes a full circle. One day when he went to the bank to deposit money, the bank manager spoke to him and suggested that he invest his money in stocks and securities. Albert Edward didn't want to risk his money and preferred to keep it safely in the bank. The manager said that they would do the investment on his behalf. All he had to do was sign the transfers. Albert Edward replied that how would he know what he was signing? The manager pointed out that he could first read and then sign the papers. Upon which Albert Edward reveals that apart from signing his name, he can neither read nor write. The manager was shocked to know this and wonders what Albert Edward would have achieved if he was literate. With a smile on his face, Albert Edward said that he would be the verger at St. Peter's Church.